We face rogue regimes that threaten the United States and our allies. We face terrorist organizations, transnational criminal networks, and others who spread violence and evil around the globe. We also face rival powers, Russia and China, that seek to challenge American influence, values, and wealth. We will attempt to build a great partnership with those and other countries, but in a manner that always protects our national interest.
That was President Trump outlining his administration's national security strategy this week in a speech that identified the growing global threats to the United States and called out key national rivals by name. So what does it tell us about the emerging Trump foreign policy doctrine, and does the rhetoric match the administration's actions so far? Let's ask Cliff May. He is president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Good to see you again, Cliff. What's the biggest takeaway we should have from the president's new strategy?
It strikes me as hard-headed, realistic, coherent, very different from President Obama's last national security strategy.
How different? Why is it different? How?
So I would say in this way, President Obama essentially believed that America's role was to lead the international community from behind and allow the arc of history to bend towards justice. I would say that President Trump believes that we should be leading from the front our allies. We should be worrying about the military threats we face from rogue regimes as well as revisionist powers, and that if the arc of history is going to bend, we're going to have to bend it.
You know, I think that the striking thing there is the revisionist powers reference in my estimation. He mentioned two countries by name, China and Russia. He said they are attempting to change the global order. They are attempting acts that are contrary to American interests, and we need to counter them as competing powers. Now, that's very different than President Obama. Do you agree with, I mean, is he right in identifying those two countries? Are they the main threats?
They are the main threats. They may not be the most imminent threats, but they're the main threats. China is clearly a long-term threat and has very important plans for it to be the hegemon of Asia and then to go beyond that, the things they're doing in other parts of the world. Russia is much weaker than China, but Russia is not, as President Obama thought, a country with which we can get along if we just reset relations, and because we have loads of common interests. Keep in mind that both Russia and China, and I would say Iran as well, these were all in history great empires.
Right.
They all are angry that they are not great empires again, and they all intend to be great empires again. And they have various means and strategies to get to that. We have to recognize that and not think that we can just sing Kumbaya and all get along.
Well, and I should mention that the strategy does say, look, we can deal with these countries. It's not as if we're totally implacably hostile to them, but you need to address, in fact, the challenge they pose, and we need to do so from a position of strength, including the military buildup, which I have to say, so far, we haven't seen very much of. So that's why I want to ask you about the connection between rhetoric and policy. Have we seen in this first year a real connection between that strategy and implementation, practically speaking?
Only a little bit. I mean, I am hopeful, as I think you are, that this tax reform means that the U.S. has growth not at 1.8%, but at 3.5, or even higher. We need a very fast-growing economy. Only if we are prosperous and strong economically can we do all the things we need to do, including economic warfare, which backs diplomacy, including a much larger and much stronger military than we have now, one that no nation can match. It should be absolutely clear that nobody can nobody can challenge us. If they can challenge us, they will. So peace through strength is an important part of it. Has that been implemented yet? It has not. But hopefully this is the blueprint for what President Trump will try to build starting in 2018. Having a national security strategy before the end of the year is pretty good compared to other administrations that have often taken longer to do this.
Another thing that's reassuring about it, particularly from the campaign rhetoric that President Trump had, was the reliance on alliances. He basically said, the strategy says, look, we need to depend upon alliances as a force multiplier for American influence and power. And for NATO and East Asia, that's very reassuring.
That is indeed, and we should have better relations with those who are allied with us. We should have worse relations with those who don't. The UN vote yesterday at the UN, which was a poke in the eye from a lot of nations that we give a lot of money to, should be something, and I think it will be, that we're very cognizant of going forward. I think also, and this surprised people, this was not at all an isolationist or non-interventionist national security strategy. And it also made the point that one of the strengths of the U.S. is that it is a free country, that it is democratic. We may not want to go abroad nation building, but we do want to support reformers and those in other countries who have the same values we have. You can say that's kind of conventional conservatism or even neoconservatism. I kind of find it reassuring.
Okay, so what's the president's biggest success so far in the first year? I guess I would suggest it's probably the defeat of Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Would you agree with that?
I think that's an important one, although I think there's a challenge there, because if the defeat of the Islamic State redounds to the benefit of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that will be another Pyrrhic victory. We've had too many of those in the past. Right now, I do think that H.R. McMaster and James Mattis understand the threat that Iran represents as it tries to build what's being called a Shia crescent or a corridor or an empire that will include Iran as the major power in Iraq, the major power in Syria, which will be its client. It already pretty much runs Lebanon through Hezbollah. And, of course, it's fighting in Yemen. I do think that there is a recognition among the Sunni Arab states that this is a huge threat and that the U.S. and Israel are needed to counter the threat of Iran. So, yes, it's a good thing that ISIS is defeated, but we can't stop there.
Big questions. All right. Thank you, Cliff May. Appreciate it.